yeah, so it was sort of overwhelming, and I've done the complete life cycle, where I qualify it as the love, the hate, the equilibrium.
Fame is a strange companion. It arrives like a storm, sweeping you off your feet, lifting you higher than you ever thought possible. At first, it feels like love, intoxicating, thrilling, an embrace that tells you you are special, chosen, different from the rest. Then, as quickly as it embraces, it begins to shift. Love becomes hate, adoration turns to jealousy, and the world that once seemed to worship you now scrutinizes your every move. If you're lucky, there comes a point of balance, a brief period of equilibrium where you understand what fame is, how to hold it without letting it consume you. But then comes the slide. At first, only you can sense it. The subtle shift in energy, the phone that doesn't ring as often, the scripts that no longer come. You tell yourself it's temporary, that things will rebound, yet slowly, almost imperceptibly, the descent begins. Fame is like sand slipping through your fingers. No matter how tightly you try to hold on, it finds a way to escape. And then comes the question, are you ever truly without it? Once you've been known, once your face has been recognized, can you ever return to anonymity? Justine Bateman lived this cycle with an intensity few can imagine. She was the girl who seemed destined for eternal stardom, the actress who defined an era on television, the name everyone assumed would dominate Hollywood for decades. But then almost overnight, she disappeared. And her absence wasn't the result of scandal, addiction, or failure. It was something far more insidious, a demand from Hollywood that she erase part of herself to remain visible. In the mid-1980s, there were few names brighter on television than Justine Bateman. Starring in the wildly popular sitcom Family Ties, she captured the hearts of millions as Mallory Keaton, the stylish and witty daughter who became a cultural icon. Casting directors saw her as the perfect blend of charisma and relatability. Fans adored her. The press hailed her as the next big thing, a young woman poised to transition from TV sweetheart to Hollywood leading lady. Producers whispered about blockbuster films, red carpet premieres, and magazine covers that would cement her place as America's new star. Yet instead of a meteoric rise, Justine's career took an unexpected turn. After Family Ties, she seemed to vanish from the public eye. Rumors swirled, speculations rose. Was she another casualty of child stardom? Did she fall into the traps of excess, scandal, or addiction that claimed so many of her peers? The truth, however, was far more complex and darker than tabloids could invent. She wasn't pushed out by failure. She walked away. Hollywood had presented her with a deal that no one should ever have to face. Erase a part of yourself, or be erased from the industry altogether. The entertainment industry has always been brutal, but for women the cruelty often cuts deeper. Justine's agents, the very people tasked with guiding her career, began to present her with options to secure longevity in the business. Behind closed doors, they told her plainly, if she wanted to keep working, she would need to undergo surgery. Not because she was unhealthy, not because she couldn't act, but because she had dared to look like herself, a natural woman aging in real time. The message was clear. Hollywood didn't want authenticity. It wanted an illusion. At first, she considered it. Meetings with surgeons were set up. Glossy portfolios were placed in front of her, filled with before and after photos of other actresses who had allegedly extended their careers through transformation. She listened, nodded, even pictured herself saying yes, but deep inside, something resisted. To cut into her face, to alter her features, to pretend she was someone she wasn't, that would mean erasing the very person she had been all her life. She wasn't willing to trade her identity for visibility, and so she made a radical choice. She walked away. For years, her decision baffled the industry. Executives couldn't understand why anyone would willingly leave the spotlight. But in 2021, she broke her silence, speaking openly about the pressure she faced and the reasons she rejected it. Her words lit a fire. Suddenly, actresses, journalists, and fans began questioning the impossible standards imposed on women in Hollywood. What began as one woman's refusal to conform grew into a quiet revolution, one that is still reshaping the industry today. Justine Tanya Bateman was born on February 19, 1966. In Rye, New York. Her family was unconventional from the very start. Her mother, Victoria, had once worked as a Pan Am flight attendant. Born in Malta and raised in England, she carried with her the poise, discipline, and slight British sensibility that gave their household a unique atmosphere. Her father, Kent Bateman, was deeply entrenched in the entertainment world, working as both an acting coach and a theatrical manager. Their home was a revolving door of performers, scripts, and industry talk. For Justine, this wasn't just background noise. It was her childhood. By the time she was 2 years old, she had already absorbed the rhythms of rehearsed lines and the energy of auditions being read aloud in her living room. The world of make-believe and performance was her normal. When her younger brother Jason was born 4 years later, the Bateman household grew even more dynamic. Together, the siblings would later become one of Hollywood's rare double success stories, each carving out their own space under the unforgiving spotlight. But before they reached the heights of fame, their upbringing was filled with constant change. Kent's career required mobility, and the Batemans moved frequently, never allowing Justine to stay rooted in one place for long. These relocations shaped her in profound ways. She became skilled at adapting, quick to read people, and practiced at blending into new environments. Yet, beneath the surface, the instability left her feeling like an outsider everywhere she went. For most children, stability comes from routines, the same house, the same school, the same group of friends. For Justine, stability was a luxury she never had. By the time she turned 12, she had already attended 5 different schools across 3 states. Each move meant a new classroom, a new teacher, a new set of peers to win over. Some kids might have embraced the adventure, but for Justine, it was exhausting. Every relocation required reinvention. She had to learn quickly who to trust, how to fit in, what to hide, and what to exaggerate. The skills she honed in those years became survival mechanisms, adaptability, charm, and an ability to read a room with uncanny accuracy. Yet, while these traits later served her well in auditions and on sets, they came at a cost. Deep down, she never felt like she truly belonged anywhere. The constant moving left her craving permanence, a sense of home that always felt just out of reach. This early instability planted the seeds of perfectionism and a desire for control. If she couldn't control where she lived or who surrounded her, she could at least control herself, her behavior, her presentation, her performance. Life in the Bateman household was anything but ordinary. While other kids worried about chores or homework, Justine and Jason were drilled in the art of performance. Their father, Kent, believed in discipline and preparation. By the time Justine was 8, she was already reading scripts out loud, practicing voice modulation, and attending industry events with her parents. Dinner conversations weren't about cartoons or playground stories, but about acting methods, casting calls, and networking opportunities. Kent treated his children less like kids and more like budding professionals. What made it even more intense was his habit of documenting everything. He kept written records of their progress, rating their appearance, noting their confidence levels, timing their mock auditions. He compared the siblings, sometimes harshly, creating a competitive environment that left little room for mistakes. To outsiders, it might have seemed like valuable preparation. To Justine, it was a constant reminder that every gesture, every word, every glance was being judged. It wasn't childhood. It was training camp for Hollywood. The first real breakthrough came not for Justine, but for Jason. At just 10 years old, he landed a coveted role on Little House on the Prairie. His early success raised the stakes for Justine, who was 2 years older and already feeling the weight of expectation. Suddenly, it wasn't enough to just audition. While most children of celebrities were privately tutored, Kent and Victoria insisted that Justine attend public schools. They believed it would keep her grounded, tethered to reality. Instead, it became another arena of struggle. Teachers treated her differently, sometimes with fascination, sometimes with disdain. Fellow students teased her relentlessly. Whispers followed her down hallways. Some accused her parents of being fake. Others mocked her as if her family was just pretending to be part of Hollywood. She missed out on normal childhood experiences, birthday parties, sleepovers, casual friendships, because parents often didn't want their kids mingling with the Batemans. The most painful memory came in 4th grade. When her classmates invented a cruel game they called Hollywood Justine, they mimicked her speech, mocked her audition attempts, and laughed whenever she tried to participate in school plays. Outwardly, she forced herself to remain calm, pretending their words didn't sting. Inwardly, she carried the wounds for years. Even in adulthood, surrounded by friends, she often felt like she was performing a role rather than being her true self. Everything shifted when the family finally settled in Los Angeles. By the time Justine was 13, they had chosen the San Fernando Valley as their permanent base, positioning themselves close to the epicenter of auditions and industry events. Her father knew that both children were entering the prime age for teen television roles, and he didn't want them wasting time. Within months, Justine was signed to the same agency as Jason. Industry insiders called it a sibling package deal, which meant that casting directors often saw them as a pair, giving both of them increased visibility. For Justine, this was both an opportunity and another source of pressure. She was now officially in the game. Hollywood wasn't just a dream, it was her daily reality. The next 18 months were grueling. Justine attended more than 150 auditions, a staggering number by any standard. Each one was meticulously tracked by her father, who kept notes on casting directors, rival actresses, and areas where Justine needed improvement. Their house in Woodland Hills became less of a family home and more of a training ground. Kent ran acting workshops from their living room, and Justine, already juggling school and auditions, was required to participate. She learned quickly that success in Hollywood wasn't just about talent, it was about endurance. Rejections piled up, each one cutting a little deeper, but she kept going. The grind was relentless, and though it hardened her resolve, it also chipped away at her innocence. At 15 in 1981, Justine finally booked her first professional job. It was a commercial, small, insignificant in the eyes of Hollywood, but for her it was monumental. It meant that all the hours of training, all the auditions, all the sacrifices were beginning to pay off. To the outside world, it looked like the start of something glamorous. What they didn't see was the exhaustion, the pressure, and the relentless demands waiting behind the scenes. For Justine, it was the beginning of a career that would soon catapult her into national fame. But even in that moment of victory, she sensed that Hollywood's love would come with a cost that one day she would refuse to pay. The real turning point in Justine Bateman's career came when she was cast as Mallory Keaton on NBC's hit sitcom Family Ties. It was 1982, and she was just 16 years old. Almost overnight, her world changed. Mallory wasn't just a character. She became a cultural touchstone. With her sharp fashion sense, quick wit, and blend of comedy and charm, Mallory resonated with audiences across America. Justine's natural timing and authenticity made the role shine. The sitcom itself was a phenomenon, centered on the generational clash between ex-hippie parents and their conservative children, with Michael J. Fox's Alex Keaton stealing much of the spotlight. But Mallory gave the show its warmth and relatability. For millions of viewers, Justine wasn't just another actress. She was the girl next door, the teenager they wished they could be, or the sister they related to. With each passing season, her fan base grew, and suddenly she was no longer just Jason Bateman's sister. She was a star in her own right. By the mid-1980s, Justine Bateman was everywhere. Magazine covers, talk shows, fan clubs, she had become one of television's most recognized faces. Her likeness adorned lunchboxes and posters. Her interviews were devoured by teenagers who wanted to emulate her style. She walked red carpets, attended premieres, and lived the life so many dreamed of. Yet behind the glamour, the experience wasn't as joyful as it appeared. Fame brought attention, but it also magnified pressure. Every outfit, every quote, every gesture was scrutinized by the press. Paparazzi lurked outside her home, chasing photos that would sell tabloids. The same fans who adored her also placed impossible expectations upon her shoulders. To the outside world, she was living a dream. Inside, she was wrestling with a truth few could see. Success had come at the cost of her peace of mind. While Family Ties gave her stardom, it also limited her. Producers and casting directors began to pigeonhole her as Mallory, the charming but superficial teenager. Every new audition seemed to reinforce the idea that Hollywood only saw her one way. She wanted to grow as an actress, to tackle serious roles, but the industry resisted. At the same time, the pressure to maintain her image grew unbearable. Executives whispered about her appearance, hinting that her marketability depended not on her skill, but on how closely she fit into Hollywood's narrow definition of beauty. She was living a double life, adored on screen, yet dismissed in the very meetings that should have expanded her career. This dissonance ate away at her confidence, planting the seeds of the decision she would one day make to leave Hollywood behind. When Family Ties ended in 1989 after 7 seasons, Justine faced the same challenge that so many television stars encounter: how to transition. She dove into films, appearing in titles like Satisfaction, 1988, alongside Julia Roberts, and other projects meant to showcase her versatility. But critics were often harsh, and box office numbers rarely matched the expectations set by her television fame. Casting directors began to hesitate. The media, once eager to crown her the next big star, now questioned whether she had staying power beyond her sitcom persona. For Justine, each rejection cut deep. She wasn't failing due to lack of effort or talent. She was battling an industry that preferred to discard its stars rather than nurture them through transitions. It was in this vulnerable period that the pressure intensified. Justine's agents, the people who should have been her advocates, presented her with what they framed as a career-saving solution. The subtext was chillingly clear. She was no longer considered fresh enough for leading roles, but there was a way to fix that. Cosmetic surgery. Everyone's doing it, they told her. It's just what you have to do to stay competitive. At first, she entertained the thought. She sat across from surgeons, leafed through portfolios, listened to promises of transformation. But each conversation felt like a betrayal, not of the industry, but of herself. To alter her face would be to admit that who she was wasn't enough. It was the moment of truth. She realized that Hollywood didn't just want her talent, it wanted her compliance. And Justine Bateman refused to comply. Her decision to walk away wasn't dramatic or explosive. It was quiet, almost invisible to the public eye. Scripts stopped coming, and she stopped chasing them. One day, she was a household name. The next, she was simply gone. Fans wondered. Tabloids speculated. But for Justine, it was a matter of survival. She chose her identity over her image, her authenticity over artificiality. The cost was high, a career that could have stretched into decades of stardom, but the reward was immeasurable. She kept herself whole. For years, she lived outside of Hollywood's spotlight, carving out a new life on her own terms. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, times when she questioned if she had made the right choice. Yet each time she looked in the mirror, she knew she had preserved something priceless, her true self. Away from the cameras, Justine explored different paths. She became an entrepreneur, running a digital production company. She pursued higher education, studying computer science at UCLA, an unusual move for a former actress, but one that reflected her determination to grow beyond the roles assigned to her. She wrote books, directed projects, and became an outspoken advocate for authenticity in an industry obsessed with illusion. Life without fame gave her freedom. She could fail without. The turning point came in 2021, when Justine spoke openly about the pressures she had faced as a young actress. In interviews and through her writing, she revealed the dark side of Hollywood's beauty obsession. She explained how her agents had tried to force her into surgery, how she had resisted, and why she had chosen authenticity over conformity. Her words struck a chord. Women across industries, not just in entertainment, resonated with her story. She wasn't just talking about Hollywood. She was exposing a culture that demanded women remain perpetually youthful, flawless, and compliant. Suddenly, Justine Bateman wasn't just remembered as Mallory Keaton. She was seen as a pioneer of a new kind of revolution, one rooted in honesty, courage, and self-acceptance. Her revelation didn't just fade into the background noise of celebrity interviews. It ignited conversations. Actresses who had once felt silenced began speaking out. Journalists covered the issue with urgency. Fans, especially women, began questioning the standards they had internalized for years. Hollywood itself was forced to reckon with its own complicity. Younger stars cited Justine as an inspiration, someone who had chosen integrity over stardom. While the industry is far from reformed, her decision remains a touchstone in ongoing debates about representation, beauty, and aging. In a way, the revolution she began is still unfolding, changing perceptions one voice at a time. Today, Justine Bateman looks back at her journey with clarity. She knows the cost of her choice, but she also understands its value. Fame gave her recognition, but walking away gave her freedom. She no longer measures success by screen time or magazine covers, but by the ability to live authentically. Her legacy isn't just about being a teen idol from the 1980s. It's about being a woman who refused to erase herself for the sake of acceptance. And so, the philosophical question she once posed lingers. Can you ever truly be without fame? Perhaps the answer is no. Once known, always known. But Justine Bateman's story proves that fame doesn't have to define you. You can step outside of it, challenge it, and even reject it, and still live a life of meaning. In the end, her story isn't about what she lost, but about what she saved, herself. Justine Bateman's choices didn't just affect her own life. They created ripples that reached future generations of women in entertainment. Young actresses who once felt the pressure to fix their appearance began citing her story as a source of strength. Her example showed them that talent and authenticity can speak louder than artificial perfection. Beyond Hollywood, young women in everyday careers, from tech to business, found themselves empowered by her refusal to conform. She became a symbol that it was not only acceptable, but admirable, to age naturally and to define success on one's own terms. For Gen Z, who have grown up in a world dominated by social media filters and curated images, her stance became a refreshing reminder that real life doesn't require airbrushing. By the 2020s, society was finally beginning to have an open conversation about aging. Campaigns, magazines, and even fashion brands started embracing real beauty, but the shift wasn't accidental. It was built on years of resistance by women like Justine. She had become a living contradiction to Hollywood's obsession with youth, a reminder that wrinkles, lines, and gray hair are not flaws, but marks of a lived life. In interviews, she often dismissed questions about looking older with a calm defiance, asking why it was a problem in the first place. This simple reframing sparked larger debates. Why did society celebrate men for aging gracefully, but shame women for the same? Why did we place expiration dates on women's relevance? Her voice amplified a truth many already felt, that dignity and authenticity are far more powerful than cosmetic illusions. Today, Justine Bateman is more than the actress who once played Mallory Keaton. She is remembered as an artist, a director, a writer, and, perhaps most importantly, a woman who made a choice few dared to make in her era. Her legacy endures not just in the reruns of Family Ties, but in the broader cultural shift toward embracing natural beauty and self-acceptance. Hollywood may continue its struggles with image and age, but Justine's name stands as proof that you can walk away from fame and still have a voice that matters. She remains an enduring symbol of authenticity in a world addicted to appearances. And in the end, her story challenges all of us to consider. When the lights fade and the applause dies down, what will we choose to protect? The image others want or the truth of who we are?